Hello and welcome back. I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching NewsX World. Let's first take a look at our top stories. Initial information suggests that all of the 49 people on board a Russian plane that crashed have died after the wreckage was found in flames in the country's Far East. The Soviet-era plane was nearly 50 years old, with children among those on board. Fresh drone strikes have been launched from both Russia and Ukraine following the conclusion of peace talks in Istanbul. Further prisoner exchanges have been agreed, though both countries remain far apart on ceasefire terms. Israel says it is assessing a response from Hamas on the recent ceasefire proposal amid continued military action in Gaza. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has said that Gaza is facing a man-made mass starvation after a warning from over 100 aid agencies. China has urged Thailand and Cambodia to resolve differences through dialogue as fresh border clashes lead to multiple deaths. Both nations' militaries exchange fire at the disputed border, which Thailand has completely sealed off amid rising tensions. Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping has met with top EU chiefs in Beijing, kicking off a summit set to be dominated by trade and the Russia-Ukraine war. China is seeking closer ties with the EU amid global trade tensions amid US tariff action. This comes as German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, as well as French President Emmanuel Macron, have discussed the ongoing EU-US trade dispute. Diplomats from the 27-nation bloc say that they are heading towards a 15% deal with the US, though retaliatory tariffs are being prepared. The White House has slammed a new claim made in the US media relating to the relationship of President Trump and late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein as fake news. The claim says Trump knew his name was in case files on Epstein amid pressure for them to be released. And Columbia University has reached a deal worth over $220 million with the Trump administration following months of negotiation to restore federal funding. Columbia has been involved in a feud with Trump over alleged anti-Semitism on campus. We start this hour, though, with a tragedy in Russia's Far East, where a passenger plane carrying 49 people has crashed near the town of Tynda in the Amur region. The AN-24 aircraft operated by Siberia-based Angara Airlines vanished from radar while on approach. According to emergency officials, the burning fuselage was located hours later by a helicopter. Preliminary data confirms no survivors. Among the 49 on board were 43 passengers, including 5 children and 6 crew members. TASS is reporting that crew error during landing in poor visibility is being considered as a likely cause. The plane was flying the Khabarovsk-Blagoevsk Tynda route when it lost contact near its final destination. Russian authorities have launched a full investigation and recovery efforts are continuing at the crash site. Well, joining us to discuss another tragic incident involving a plane is Dr. Vipul Saxena, a defence expert joining us live from New Delhi. Dr. Saxena, thank you ever so much for joining us. Some tragic news, 49 people on board a plane, poor visibility, potential error being discussed, but is it too early to speculate given that investigations have only just started?
Yeah, so whatever information available and what I'm aware about the Russian aviation sector, especially in the Serbia area and all that. So these are basically very old aircraft. I've learned that this aircraft was of 1976 registration aircraft, which makes it about almost 50-year-old aircraft. And especially in this terrain, this geographical area, the weathers are quite bad most of the year, with low temperatures, sub-zero temperatures. Even today, the temperature was 10 degrees. So in such weather conditions, the aircraft need a lot of maintenance. And especially in the Russian aircraft, the avionics, the aids which is there for the Western aircraft for the pilot, these are not so advanced. This is typically design of Russian systems, which are not so user friendly, which are not so advanced in terms of accuracy and in terms of capabilities. So having those kind of background and very old aircraft, bad weather in this area. This area is also a very hilly terrain. If you see, this area is surrounded by the various hills, so it doesn't make a really very comfortable approach path for a pilot to follow. So I feel it could be an error of judgment because avionics of Russian aircraft are not so advanced, not so accurate. And then you also have a poor visibility and bad weather. I think this makes situation very complicated in the hilly terrain especially. It makes very challenging for any pilot to do this. And if you have very old aircraft, there are always chances of the fuselage giving away or some part of the aircraft giving away,
Yes.
causing this crash.
Yes, Dr. Saxena, before we move on, of course, many recent incidents of aircraft, small and large, crashing with lots of civilian casualties being reported. Some people obviously drawing the dots and joining them together and questioning safety. Do you think that the increasing number of airplane incidents means that there should be a review into the safety of airlines and aircraft that are being used? You mentioned there that this aircraft is extremely old. Should those checks be made mandatory worldwide?
Absolutely, I agree with you. I think somewhere the regulator should increase the oversight periodicity over this aircraft and also must come out with more additional checks on this aircraft when it comes to whether it's the engine health or whether it is the airframe health. Because area having a high moisture most of the year, it causes a lot of decay in the airframe part, and it becomes very challenging, very difficult to maintain such a huge aircraft, in terms of health of the structure itself. So I think unless there is additional checks being done on the aircraft structure as well as in the engine, I think then we can find the solution to this kind of frequent crashes and fatal accidents.
Yes, Dr. Saxena, you will be staying with us. Thank you, though, for that insight on this tragic event. We will bring you further updates on the air crash that has taken place in the east of Russia as we get them. But we now move further west, and overnight drone warfare escalated sharply between Russia and Ukraine just hours after another round of peace talks in Istanbul failed to yield progress on a ceasefire. Ukraine says Russia launched heavy strikes on Odessa, targeting seaports, transport hubs and residential zones. Fires broke out in homes, kiosks, petrol station and even in the historic centre, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Meanwhile, Ukrainian drones hit targets in southern Russia, including an oil depot in the Sirius Federal District near Sochi. A woman was killed and another seriously injured when drone debris landed in the Adler district. Flights at Sochi airport were briefly suspended. Ukraine's strikes continue to focus on Russian energy infrastructure, while Russia intensifies attacks on southern Ukrainian cities. Both sides have confirmed the drone attacks, but offer differing casualty reports. Talks in Istanbul did result in plans for further prisoner of war exchanges, but ceasefire terms remain unresolved after 3.5 years of war. Well, thank you, Dr. Saxena, for staying with us. Of course, some aspects of diplomacy at play. Prisoner of war exchanges agreed as they had been in the previous two meetings in recent months taking place in Istanbul. But following those talks, further drone strikes from either side leading to more casualties. What is the motivation behind both countries if they're having peace talks but then following up with drone action leading to potential civilian deaths? What, in your opinion, is that going to achieve moving forward as both countries say they're working towards peace?
Yeah, I think it shows very clearly that both the countries are not serious about coming to ceasefire agreement. I think they are being forced by various forces like America and other countries to come to table, while both the countries don't seem to be very serious. Because if they're really serious, without forcing any kind of ceasefire, they should themselves decide, kind of a undeclared ceasefire to show that they're positive about it and they're looking for some solution. But I think in the past meetings also, during the meeting and before the meeting, there have been serious and very major strikes done by both the countries, which shows that I think the mediators are not being really very effective or very successful to bring this both the parties seriously on the table of negotiation or to ceasefire. I think some other route need to be found. And the second thing I also would like to highlight here for both the countries, that when they are attacking, they should try to leave at least public places and populated places where civilians are staying. You hit some big industry, you hit power plant, you hit any other strategic point. But the Odessa food market is a huge populated place where very reasonable priced food is available, and it is always full of crowd. I think this kind of places should be definitely avoided by both the parties, whether it's Russia or Ukraine. Even Ukraine has hit many times hospitals and all that. I think both these countries must take a pledge at least not to hit the area where there's a population, there's a civilian staying. I think that should be the first commitment both the countries should make. And before they come to table, they must show some kind of seriousness in their approach by reducing attacks or stopping attack for some time without declaring it, which is not happening at this moment.
Yes, Dr. Vipul Saxena, thank you ever so much for joining us on the programme today. We will bring you all the updates on the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, both diplomatic and on the battlefield. But we move on now, as China has expressed deep concern over deadly clashes between Cambodia and Thailand along their disputed border. China is also calling for dialogue between the two sides to resolve their differences peacefully. Thailand condemned Cambodia as inhumane for targeting civilian infrastructure with artillery, resulting in casualties. The Thai government has called on the international community to take action. In response, Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet has urged the UN Security Council to convene urgently, accusing Thailand of unprovoked military aggression. As tensions escalate, both nations continue to trade cross-border fire. Let's now listen in to some of the Thai civilians on what this war situation is like.
รู้สึกกลัวนิดนึงครับแล้วก็คือไม่อยากให้เกิดสงครามครับอยากให้มันจบลงเร็วๆครับแต่ว่ามองว่าถ้าเขาเริ่มก่อนแล้วเราควรจะโต้กลับบ้างอันนี้ก็โอเคครับแต่อยากให้มันจบเร็วที่สุดครับ
ก็อยากให้มันจบนะครับเพราะว่าต่อสู้ไปมันก็กระทบกันทั้งสองฝ่ายนะครับในความรู้สึกแต่ถ้าเกิดไม่ตอบโต้เลยมันก็เขาจะคิดว่าเราไม่มีอะไรครับ
Well, joining us to discuss this escalating situation that now has been commented on by China, Rohan Gunaratne, an international affairs expert, joining us live from Singapore. Professor Gunaratne, as always, thank you for your time. China now talking about a dialogue over a situation which has been bubbling over, but is now escalating and leading to deaths confirmed, with a sealing of the border from Thailand. Why is China getting involved in this situation? How significant is a dispute and a deadly situation between Cambodia and Thailand for the wider region?
This region where the fighting is called the Emerald Triangle, and Cambodia and Thailand has been involved in this dispute for a long period of time. But this has assumed a new dimension recently. And of course, the potential for escalation is huge. The loss of civilian lives, loss of property is huge. Both are countries that are not doing too well. So certainly, Chinese mediation, Chinese negotiation, Chinese arbitration, or the Chinese mere advocacy and proposal for discussion and dialogue is a good thing. naturally the United Nations will play an important role. But other than that, ASEAN also can play a very important role behind the scenes to make sure that within that block of nations, they don't fight. This is the fastest growing region in the world. And I think that what is important is to maintain stability and security by preventing this kind of threats and escalation.
Professor Gunaratne, we've had both sides blaming each other for this escalation, saying that the other started firing across the border, accusations of shellings in civilian areas. What world leadership is needed, maybe not just from China, to try and de-escalate this situation, to stop it turning into a more widespread war affecting civilians, not just in this disputed border area, but potentially across the whole of both countries?
You used the right word. You said leadership. So it is a matter of statesmanship of both these countries that is vital at this point. And of course, leadership on the part of other countries that will persuade the leaders of Cambodia and Thailand. That is, by fighting, you will not get anywhere, but you will only groove deeper. So I believe that there should be a summit, there should be a meeting of these two leaders convened either in Beijing or any other country, so that there will be a discussion and dialogue.
Yes, Professor
Without
Gunaratne.
without that dialogue, I don't think there will be peace.
Absolutely, and that potential dialogue is something we will continue to monitor as escalations continue to sharpen. You will be staying with us, Professor Gunaratne, as we move away from Southeast Asia and now head towards the Middle East. Israel's government has confirmed it has received Hamas's response to the latest ceasefire proposal from Gaza. A statement from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office says the response is now under review by Israeli negotiators. This comes as talks have dragged on for more than 2 weeks without a breakthrough, with each side blaming the other for refusing to budge on key demands. For Israel, dismantling Hamas's military and governing capabilities is non-negotiable, while Hamas continues to demand firm guarantees on a lasting truce, a full withdrawal of Israeli troops and the free flow of aid into Gaza. Professor Gunaratne, thank you for staying with us. Though there has been progress in these talks, clearly both sides, negotiators, engaged in discussions with key mediators, including the United States, Qatar and Egypt. We have heard in recent days and weeks from the US and Israel that a deal is close. But it seems from these comments and the response that has been sent over that both sides remain stagnant in their positions and strong on what they want. How, in any way, can both sides come to a compromise when they're so strong on their specific points that they're wanting in these talks?
Hamas is demanding a ceasefire. The Israelis are reluctant to give a ceasefire, but will agree to it because Israel knows through military operations they cannot they cannot rescue the remaining hostages. Because Hamas has built an entire city beneath the surface of Gaza. And the Americans also know that. And of course, America, Qatar, Egypt, they have played a very important role. And also the humanitarian catastrophe that you have personally raised with me many times is worsening. So I believe that today it is coming to a point where Israel and Hamas will agree to the latest proposal. And I think both citizens of these countries should be very grateful to Qatar, to Egypt, to the United States for moving forward in this direction, because the humanitarian catastrophe is worsening. And of course, the probability of those hostages remaining alive has diminished over time.
Yes, Professor Gunaratne, before we move on, you did mention there, of course, the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. We've had reports overnight from the World Health Organization saying that it is man-made mass starvation at play in the enclave. We've also heard from over 100 aid agencies talking about the limited number of food, reports of deaths of children reaching double digits. and further issues of famine also being brought up. International pressure has been there. At what point does international pressure turn into international action?
At this point, we are seeing that there is significant pressure, but too much of pressure is not good. Today, the Israeli parliament is planning to pass a resolution that prohibits Palestinian statehood. The right-wing parties are doing that. And if that happens, certainly the Palestinian community, the Palestinian threat groups, their position will become even harder. So what is important is for all actors, all parties to move towards a resolution rather than taking a tough position.
Yes, Professor Rohan Gunaratne, thank you ever so much for your time. Lots to monitor in Gaza, and at the diplomacy table we will be here for all of those. But we move on now and we start looking to trade as the European Union is closing in on a deal with the United States to impose a flat 15% tariff on EU exports, a move aimed at avoiding a sharper 30% duty threatened by President Trump starting on August the 1st. According to 2 EU diplomats, the deal could apply to key sectors including cars and pharmaceuticals, mirroring a recent agreement Washington struck with Japan. While some industries like aircraft, agriculture and lumber may be exempt, the US is expected to keep its existing 50% tariff on steel. Reportedly, the EU could agree to these reciprocal levies to defuse the escalating trade standoff. But officials say the 27-nation bloc is still preparing a backup package of retaliatory tariffs worth 93 billion euros that could be triggered if these talks fail before August the 1st. Well, joining me live from the newsroom, Asuma Kotoka, anchor and correspondent with NewsX World, to discuss this further. Asuma, thank you for joining us. What more can you tell us about this situation that, of course, it is becoming more pertinent given the fact that that August the 1st deadline is around a week away?
Yes, so EU has shown some hope that they are about to reach, according to 3 people who were involved in these talks and who are supposedly who have the information. They've told Financial Times that the EU is closer to reaching a deal with the US, and also Chancellor Merz yesterday, while welcoming French President Emmanuel Macron to Germany, said that he welcomes this trade deal if it were to take effect before August 1st. So, however, the 15% is still much more compared to the earlier tariffs that were in place before US President Donald Trump took office, which was 4.8%. So if you compare it to 4.8%, of course, this is still 15% is still big. But if you compare it to the 30%, which was threatened by US, it is a good deal. And also Japan reached to a tariff yesterday, which is 15%. So this trade, and it kind of mirrors the trade that has been the trade tariff that has been decided between Japan and Japan and US. We will still be watching as the confirmation is yet to come.
Yes, absolutely. And it's important to note as well that, of course, there are some rates on individual goods that are higher than this proposed 15% that would still stay in place. That includes steel. Asuma, before we let you go, of course, you mentioned some other deals that are ongoing. This deadline of August the 1st, though is firm, could see some movement. But can you talk broader, please, about overall trade and these US policies, and just provide some context on why this is so important and why it's been so destabilizing for global economics?
Well, it's very destabilizing and scary for consumers, especially people involved in businesses. Germany especially is involved in, highly involved in exporting cars, automobiles to US. and spirits as well, and also U.S. importing or exporting bourbon to EU in very high amounts. So if the EU decides to go with countermeasures, which was speculated earlier by EU that they are ready and they have decided, except only one country, except media reports show that only one country, which was Hungary, that was disagreeing with the countermeasures to be put on US. So EU already has a very strong countermeasures, as reports show, and maybe because of that, US has maybe taken a step back in giving EU a better or 15% trade deal.
Asuma Kotoka, thank you ever so much for that insight. Of course, ahead of that August 1st deadline, we will be here bringing you all of the updates on potential trade deals struck between the US and their trading partners. But now we stay in North America, as US President Donald Trump will visit the Federal Reserve on Thursday. The White House has confirmed, marking a surprise move that ramps up pressure on Fed Chair Jerome Powell. Trump has repeatedly criticised Powell for not cutting interest rates more aggressively. Trump also has, on many instances, talked publicly about firing Powell. Trump, who nominated Powell during his first term, has since become a vocal critic, blaming him for not cutting interest rates fast enough. Meanwhile, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that the administration would probably announce a new Fed chair nominee in December or January next year. He further added that the US could see 1 to 2 rate cuts this year. Well, now it's time for us to take a look at the latest from across the world of sports. Spain have advanced to their first ever Women's Euro final after a dramatic 1-0 extra time victory over Germany, thanks to a brilliant strike from Aitana Bonmati. The win marks a historic milestone as it's Spain's first major tournament victory over the Germans. Bonmati's goal was especially meaningful following a meningitis-related health scare just before the tournament got underway. Spain now face defending champions England in the Euro 2025 final on July the 26th in Basel, a repeat of the 2023 World Cup final where Spain were crowned champions. Staying with football, and the Mexican Football Federation has fined Javier Chicharito Hernandez and opened an investigation after the striker posted TikTok videos deeming to promote sexist stereotypes. In a joint statement with the Liga MX and Liga MX Femenil, officials said his comments violated gender and diversity policies and constituted media violence. Hernandez received a financial penalty and formal warning, with authorities warning of harsher sanctions for any repeat offences. The FMF emphasised its commitment to gender equality and respectful conduct in sport. To Formula One, Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff has confirmed George Russell and rookie Kimi Antonelli are the team's top choices for next season. This seemingly rules out an immediate move for Red Bull's star and reigning world champion Max Verstappen. Verstappen is trailing McLaren's Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris in the title standings, with Red Bull undergoing leadership changes. Speculation about a switch to Mercedes has intensified. However, Wolff's comments suggest the team is focused on continuity and grooming their young talents ahead of F1's new engine era, with changes coming in 2026. Maeve Kyle, Ireland's first female track and field Olympian, has died at the age of 96. A trailblazer for women in sport, Kyle competed in the 1956 Melbourne Olympics in the 100 and 200 metres, breaking ground at a time of limited opportunities. She went on to compete in 3 Olympic Games and reached the semi-finals in the 400 metres and 800 metres at Tokyo in 1964. Also a standout in field hockey, Kyle earned over 50 caps for Ireland. The Olympic Federation of Ireland hailed her as a true legend and an inspiration. And USC has announced that 5-star recruit Elijah Arenas will miss 6 to 8 months following knee surgery. Arenas, son of former NBA star Gilbert Arenas, had recently returned to practice after recovering from a serious car accident in April. USC coach Eric Musselman praised Arenas' work ethic and expressed confidence in his recovery. Well, that is all we have time for, but we will continue to bring you more of the latest breaking news from across the world.